Hello photographers, we're in Photoshop today because we're going to be talking about selections, and you need to understand selections for this next unit on photo collage. So let's get started by going to File, New, and we're going to set this up as an 8 by 10. So we're going to switch our pixels to inches over here on the right, and then for your width it's 8 by 10 with the resolution of 200. And you can either have it going portrait up and down or side to side, it does not matter, and then click create. All right, let's immediately save this file, save as. Save it in your yearbook photos folder, which I don't have one, so we're gonna pretend I'm in that folder, and I just want you to call it selections lesson, okay? And hit save. All right, so now we've got our selections lesson ready to go, and we're gonna first start by opening up a couple of images. So let's open up 2 images from whatever the last unit or last thing you did, doesn't matter. I'm gonna open up 2 images. And you should be familiar with this now. Notice it stacks them on top of each other, right? Okay. So we're gonna start real simple. We're gonna slowly build up what you can do with selections. So the first thing you should know is that you can drag and drop images entirely onto a background. So we're going to do that. So I want you to pull down the tab bar on one of your images, and I want you to grab your move tool, and I want you to click and drag and release until you drop it on top of that blank document. And then we're not going to close that document. I just want you to re-shelve it up top. Okay? So go ahead and stop and do that now. All right. Depending on what size your image is, you're probably going to need to resize it, but I want you to resize it so it's takes up a quarter of your page. So just like this, okay? We're just going to resize it. All right, that's step number 1. I'm showing you lots of things that we're doing here. So we've dragged and dropped. I also want to show you that you can make multiple copies of a layer. First, let's open our layers panel. So we're going to go to Window and then open up layers. We now have our layers over here. This is where we're used to doing image adjustments at. That's where they show up. All right, to make a copy of a layer, it's really simple. I find that layer, and I like to rename all my layers so they make sense. So I double click on the word layer 1, and I'm just gonna call it New York because it's my New York image. Okay, so I know that's what it is. I can make copies by clicking and dragging and pulling that down. So go ahead and do that now. Okay, so it's not going to look like anything happened. They're stacked on top of each other. So grab that move tool again, and I just want you to move it down. All right, excellent. While we're here, just so I can show you a little bit about manipulating, is we're going to invert our image here. We're going to invert the colors rather than doing it as an adjustment layer because we're just kind of moving fast today, and I don't want to worry about having to flatten layers. With this copy on, so our New York copy layer, or whatever you called yours, you're going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and I want you to go to Invert. So notice it flipped the black, made it white, and the white made it black. Okay? Or if you have a color image, it's going to flip, it's going to make everything opposite. All right, so stop the video and do that now. Okay, so now let's talk about selections. There's a variety of selection tools that we have here that we're going to focus on just 3. So we're going to focus on the rectangle and the elliptical marquee tools, which you should already be somewhat familiar with. But then we're going to add in this third tool, the polygon lasso tool. Okay, so let's grab our rectangle marquee tool, and I want you to click on one of your images that you open. Doesn't matter which one. So with our rectangle marquee tool, make sure you don't have a feather up here. So take your feather off, and then on one of your images, I want you to click and drag just a small section, doesn't matter. And then I want you to grab your move tool, and I want you to move it onto your other image. Don't close that file yet, keep it open. All right, so drag and drop that on there. All right, I want you to resize so it's approximately the same size as what I have here. And then I'm going to show you how to rotate this selection. So if I let my cursor hover, I get a double-headed arrow. If I click and drag, I can rotate that. And then you hit either done or hit the check mark up here, and we'll close it. Let's take that selection and I want you to move it on top Just showing you how you can move it on top of the other image. Okay, let's move it so it's slightly hanging off and slightly over top. All right, stop the video, do that now. All right, and if you haven't saved recently, go ahead and save. All right, let's go back to that same image we just pulled the small selection from. We're gonna do that again. Stick with your rectangle marquee tool, and this time, as you click and drag, before you start I want you to hold down the shift key. Oops. First of all, deselect that last one either by going into select, deselect up at the top, or Control D, okay, because you can't have a selection. Now, hold down your shift key, and you're gonna click and drag, and you're gonna notice it makes it a perfect square this time, and then release. And you got it. Let's drag that little square selection onto our original image. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger and click OK. All right, so that's making a perfect selection. We're going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to show you. We're going to do that with the ellipse tool. So go back to the same image we were just at. Deselect this. Okay, so deselect. Let's grab our elliptical marquee tool. Again, double check and make sure you don't have a feather. And click and drag an oval selection. And then we're going to drag and drop that on. You got to grab your move tool, drag and drop it on. And we're going to rotate it, and we're going to let it hang off of this one over here. I know this doesn't look all that exciting, but we're just learning the tools. Okay, so that's our ellipse. To make a perfect circle, let's deselect that. We're going back to the original image. Just like we did with the marquee, you're going to hold down Shift as you click and drag, and now you're going to get a perfect circle. If I release that, if it's not right where I want it to be, before you switch to your move tool, if you drag inside, I can move that marquee, which again, you should know how to do that, but just in case. All right, go ahead and click and drag and move that perfect circle selection onto that image. And let's go ahead and resize this, making it a little bit bigger, and hit enter. Okay, we're starting to get somewhere now. All right. Let's start talking about our polygon tool. All right, again, doesn't matter, open up one of your other images. I know I keep switching back and forth again. Let's pull this down. Now I'm going to show you how to use the polygon lasso tool. So the polygon lasso tool works just like a connect the dots tool. It allows you to make selections, still geometric in nature, so think about them as straight edges, like stars, rectangles, triangles, diamonds, those kinds of things, simply with a click of a button. So let's grab our polygon lasso tool. Make sure you're not using the magnetic, you want the polygon. And then coming into one of your images, I want you to click 3 times, click, 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 and then starting back at your starting point to select a triangle. Very good. And then I want you to drag and drop that on. Okay, so stop the video, and now we've dragged and dropped on a triangle. Let's go ahead and make that about that size and click OK. All right, so that's how you manipulate if you are pulling on images from another source. But how can you cut away an image that's actually in your, like, think about it using an X-Acto blade. So these were cutting and pasting. Can you just cut through? And the answer is yes. So we're going to come over to our very first image. And you need to find where that copy layer is. We're going to make yet another copy, so click on your New York copy layer. Hold down your Alt key. You should get a double-headed arrow, and we're going to drag and drop whatever that inverted one was right back on top. Okay, so stop the video, do that now. Okay, very good. So it looks something like this. You've got that 2 inverted. All right. In your layers panel, you need to take that second copy and you need to put it underneath the original. So see, it's still there, it's underneath. So if you look in your layers panel, you got the original black and white, or the original colored image. And then you've got the inverted one stacked underneath. Stop the video, go do that now. Okay, now we're gonna zoom in a little bit. Ooh, that's a little too much. And I'm gonna show you how you can actually cut through to a layer below. Okay, so we're using like an X-Acto blade. So that's what that polygon lasso, that's where this really comes in. Handy was doing stuff like this. So grab that polygon lasso tool, and it doesn't matter what is in your image. Obviously mine has these buildings. I want you to click to create a shape of some kind. I'm using the window as a guide just because it's kind of easier, but I'll do it another way. Until you get marching ants, you get a close-in selection. Double check to make sure you're on that top layer. So this is the black and white, the original. I'm on that. And then all I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna hit my delete key, and it now has deleted what's on that top layer. So this is what that top layer actually looks like. I'm deleting it through to show what's beneath that. So that's how you're literally cutting through one layer to show the layers beneath it. And I can even move that. So if I click on this, I grab my move layer, or my move tool. Notice I can move that around behind that. So that's how you would manipulate to cut through. I can also decide I just don't want a whole portion of an image. So if I click back, we're gonna do this again. Click back on that original image file, grab your polygon lasso tool again. We're gonna click in the top left-hand corner, and then we're gonna slide down, not a straight line, just to cut a diagonal. We're cutting off this bottom left-hand corner, so I'm gonna click to the left, and then we'll come back up and close that selection. You get the little circle, close it, and then again, you can delete it. So that's your cutting through. So here's what it looks like again. That's what that image looks like. I just used it like X-Acto blade. I cut through. I'm showing the image that's behind it. Okay, so let's review what you should have done in your image. So you should have made multiple copies of the same image. We should have stacked images on top of each other. We have two different marquee selections. We've got two ellipses. I've showed you how to use the polygon tool to create an irregular shape. It's not a circle, it's not a square, okay? You could also do like a diamond, you could do a star, whatever you could do with those points, right? The last thing I have to show you are layer styles. So if you haven't stopped and saved recently, save before we start this next step. All right, let's talk about our layer styles. Layer styles are in the bottom portion of the layers panel, and there's several in here, but there's really only a few I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on possibly using maybe bevel and emboss, stroke, inner shadow or inner glow, and then your drop shadow. I would not mess with the satin or any of the overlays or outer glows. Just don't, because it's not going to work well for what we're doing in this unit, okay? But the first few will work. So bevel and emboss makes something look like it's popping out. A stroke means it's going to outline something. And then drop shadow is just what it sounds like. It's going to create a cast shadow. So we're going to start first with the one that's the easiest to understand, which is the stroke. We're going to navigate to the very first small rectangle that we did that's on a rotation. So it's the one that we put right about here. We got to find where that is. The easiest way is to kind of turn the eyeballs on and off in our layers panel to see, there it is. So I'm even going to rename this. I'm going to call this diagonal, or actually I'm going to call it tilted square. You don't have to title if you don't want to, or you can title it whatever you want. Okay, so click on your tilted square layer here. We're going to go back to that FX. I want you to click on that, and I want you to go to stroke. Remember, stroke creates an outline. It's going to show you in real time, if your preview is checked, what it's going to do here. You can make it really, really thick or really, really thin, okay? You can make it kind of somewhat see-through, or you can make it really opaque. You can change the color. I want to keep it either black or white for this. So any range of white, black, or gray, you can change it. That's fine. Put whatever size you want. And for me, I always like putting the stroke on the outside of the selected area, because if you go on the inside, watch what's going to happen. If I increase the size, you're going to end up covering. So I like to always put it on the outside, because that way the stroke is going to go outward if it gets really, really thick. All right, and then click OK. You'll notice now you have that stroke effect on that tilted. I'm going to show you how to make copies. So I want to copy it, I want to put it on here. Easiest way to do that, we got to find which one that is first, which is right here. If I hold down my Alt key and hover over the word stroke, I can click and drag. I'm holding down my Alt key, I'm letting it hover over that second layer, and then I'm going to release my mouse, and now notice it's put a stroke on that rectangle as well. Okay, so stop the video. I want you to apply 2 strokes. All right, let's go down to our 2 ellipses, which are down here. And I want you to apply a drop shadow. So we're going to click on drop shadow. For your blending mode, always leave it to normal. Opacity, let's crank it all the way up to 100% opaque. You can change the angle where that drop shadow falls. Doesn't matter, wherever you do it, that's fine. You can make it spread quite far away. You can make it thicker. You could also make it so it radiates much wider. And again, you can take your opacity down so it kind of shows through. So if you look really closely, it's showing a little bit of the photo that's there behind it. But let's go ahead and apply a drop shadow with a opacity of 25%. And then I'll let you set your distance, spread, size, and angle. Let's set it to black and click OK. We're going to copy this onto that other ellipse that we had. How do we do that? As a reminder, hold down Alt, we click and drag, and drop it on the other one as well. All right, so stop the video, do that now. All right, so we've learned how to apply the stroke, we've done shadow, and then I want you on your last layer here, your triangle layer, I want you to apply the bevel and emboss. So we're going to click on bevel and emboss. Again, you can make this more or less severe, just playing with your dials here. Take my opacity up. So it just looks like it's a 3D, it's popping out like a button, and then click OK whenever you're happy with it. All right, that's it. We've learned a lot about selections. If you are done, you're going to watch the video on how to apply the selections, or you can just sit and experiment a little bit longer today before you're ready to start your photo collage. Excellent work.